Hi, everyone. Welcome to Nom Watch Review, part of Nom Talk Network. On this show, we review the latest film drops or throwbacks celebrating a milestone while eating and drinking our favorite movie snacks and or drinks. I'm your host, Erric Ramirez, and right now I'm enjoying a Voodoo Ranger. I don't know if you can see that because I have blur on, but it's a really good IPA. Also snacking on some Jolly Ranchers because my partner's making food. But I am super excited to talk about the movie that we're going to be talking about, but I want to introduce our guests first. We have Carolyn, Jennifer, and Waiya. Waiya, why don't you go ahead and introduce everybody out there to yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Waiya Paints. I stream here on YouTube under Waiya Paints, and I mean Twitch. I'm out of it today. Today I'm drinking Mike's Hard Blue Freeze. It's blue, so it's got to be tasty.
They are really good. But next, Carolyn, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody out there.
Hey guys, I'm Carolyn. You just saw me on the Last of Us show on Monday, and tonight's drink of choice as we talk about a noir masterpiece is the classic. You can't see it because it's so mysterious. Diet Coke. Yes, that mysterious. And then for snacks, if I feel the need for snacks, I did buy something that I was gonna make, but I napped. So we're having Reese's Pieces.
Nice. Can't go wrong with Reese's Pieces. And Jennifer, I'm glad to have you on again. Go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. I haven't been gargling razor blades, even though it sounds like it. I'm excited to be back. I haven't been on since last year, so I'm glad to be back. And I'll be enjoying some lemon ginger tea with honey in it and some Hall's honey lemon cough drops while we discuss the movie.
Well, definitely sounds like you need it, like with your voice and everything like that. Hope it gets better. Hope that helps. But I am super excited today because we are talking today about the 1998 neo-noir science fiction film, Dark City. I love this film. It has been so long since I watched it, so it was great catching up. I did your guys's when you guys first saw the film, what you thought of the film, how long ago was it, and what you thought about it watching it up to this. We'll start with you, Wyatt.
Well, I remember going and seeing this when I was a kid. Well, as much of a kid as I was in 98. It was during a time where I was really getting into dark sci-fi, and this is pretty much as dark as sci-fi gets at the time. So it really resonated with me, scared the crap out of me, and it's been a cult favorite of mine since then. So.
Cool. Yeah, right with you. I love the darker themes in this, which was different from the times. Jennifer, when did you first come in contact with this movie, and what were your thoughts?
I went and saw this movie when it came out in 1998 in the theaters. I loved it. We went on a work group bonding night and had margaritas beforehand. And ever since I can remember, I have loved Kiefer Sutherland, love. So I was really excited to see him in this movie. And the rest of the cast, I was like, who's this Rufus guy? He's amazing. So yeah, I really liked it back then. And I've only watched it a couple of times since then, but it's always kind of stuck with me in the back of my head.
Cool. And Carolyn, when did you first come in contact with it, and what are your thoughts about it?
So I first came into contact with it after, ironically, The Matrix, because I saw the trailer and the strangers freaked me out. So I was a little hesitant to initially watch it. But after I watched The Matrix, I went seeking out that dark neo-noir sci-fi. And there's definitely, in fact, some parallels between the two. They actually filmed on the same soundstage and they used some of the same sets. And I love Alex. Oh my God, I'm gonna mispronounce the director's name. I love The Crow. So I'm just gonna say his other stuff. I love The Crow. He did The Crow. I love the set design. His movies definitely shaped my personal aesthetic as a kid, which is gonna sound very strange, but that neo-noir metropolis style, Terry Gilliam style of cities and grit and grime, between that and Blade Runner, that's what shaped my sensibilities for film and for things that I like. And so that's always I've always weirdly tried to emulate his work, and this one with its philosophical themes just really spoke to me.
Okay, okay. And we'll definitely get into that here in a little bit because I'm definitely interested in hearing your thoughts on that. Sorry, excuse me. So I'm just going to break down the movie and then we're going to get down into it. So what IMDb and all of those say, just as a quick breakdown, is a man finds himself suspected of murder and attempts to discover his true identity and clear his name while running from the police and the mysterious group known as the Strangers. That is the breakdown for the film. Now, with this, there is a lot going on throughout all of this movie, like changing, bringing different characters in and everything like that. Jennifer, we'll start with you on this one. What did you think about the storyline about this movie? Did you think the pacing was good, that they threw too much in, that it was a little bit darker? What were your thoughts?
No, I think they paced it really well. I like dark, so I was fine with dark. I know a couple people I saw it with originally, they didn't care for it, but it's not their type of movie. I don't have like a particular, I mean, I love superhero movies. Anyone who knows me knows that, but that's not the only thing I like. I love dark, I love sci-fi, I love horror, and this kind of had a little bit of all of it. Plus, huge X-Files fan, so aliens, bring it on. I just loved the whole aspect of him not having, the whole memory thing, everything they did to manipulate these people and create this society, when in so many ways we think of, if we wanted to create a society to our dream standard, it would be a positive society where everybody's helping each other, no one's hungry, things like that. This is very much kind of the opposite of that in my view. And even last night while I was doped up to the gills with Sudafed and stuff, I still could follow it just fine. I still enjoyed it. I think it stands up. It stands up because it's not in any particular time. So it's really something that's just going to last.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Even watching it today and yesterday and everything, the time frame of it, I think is going to last forever because it's that neo-noir future and it could be anytime, anywhere, and plus how dark it is. And being at night set through the entire movie, I feel like this is just going to go on years and years and years. Waiya, what are your thoughts about like the plot of the movie and like how dark and in themes that it gets at some points?
Personally, I loved it. One of the main takeaways why I loved it is that at no point does the movie want to hold your hand as an audience and explain everything. In fact, it goes out of its way to not explain anything. And so you're like along with this adventure with the protagonist of what exactly is going on, what is important, what's not an important thing. And you piece it together with him, which is something that, takes a very soft hand when it comes to directing, to be able to have this narrative that's there without breadcrumbing all of the important information to the audience. It's just, oh, well, you glean it a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. And it's not until a good halfway, 2/3 of the movie that all the pieces just start to fall into place really nicely. And you just go, whoa, this movie just flipped itself on its head and I didn't see it coming.
My kitty wants to interrupt you, Waiya. Oh yeah, no, I completely agree with you. The pacing and like not spoon feeding us the storyline and just letting us figure it out with the character, I think is brilliant. Carolyn, what about you? What were your thoughts?
I think that for me, everyone talks about how, in terms of storytelling, it's holds up because it doesn't deal with a particular time period. Also, from a technical standpoint and from like an actual story structure standpoint, I would argue it holds up further because this is very reminiscent of like, German expressionism films and like the surreal stuff when film was first coming out. And so I think his audiences, because you have all of that to build on, and all of that has built up to our perceptions of film today. So when you're watching this particular movie, you already have the pieces in mind to, as Waiya said, connect the pieces, to not have a movie hold your hand. And as Jennifer said, to, make sure that the storyline is easy to follow. You've been trained and conditioned by all of the same topics that this film had to move it forward. And it's with films like this, I think that it pushes not to get pretentious, but it pushes cinema to do things that are different, because it's like, yeah, as time has progressed, we do have a lot of superhero movies. I love superheroes. I mean, we all know this. I love superheroes too. But this is what I think when people initially thought of movies making films, they wanted to make, stuff like this, and that would be surreal and weird, not man fly through sky and punch things.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. All of us love a good superhero movie. But yeah, no, I get you. I feel like this is one of those films that I go back to and think like this was a true passion project. They got to do what they wanted to do. The script was what they wanted to do. The cast was incredible, which we'll get to in a second. But before we get into cast and everything like that, I do want to go over our popcorn ratings. So I will start. I gave this movie a 4, just because some of the story to me sometimes could have moved a little bit faster, just a little bit. Like, love Kiefer Sutherland, but those moments with him, I think, just could have been picked up and paced a little bit more. But hands down, I give this a 4 because it's just a great movie. Carolyn, we'll start with you and your popcorn rating right now.
So I rated it a 5. And when we were talking about the ratings, I said that I was going to be able to back it up with facts. I've already stated how the film kind of has trained us to accept films like these with stories, so that you can actually say, as you go through the story, it's like, well, the story makes sense, but it could have gone a little faster. So like what the pieces are going to be, but you're able to make distinctions on that. Historically, I think that the ideas behind the themes of the film are very interesting. It's one of the few films I've seen that talks about the allegory of the cave. And I was reading about this, and it's Plato's allegory of the cave, which I'm more than happy to expound upon, but it's a philosophical concept about perception and reality that's very relevant to film, because the short explanation from what limited I can understand of it is that you see what you perceive, and your mind assigns information to what you perceive, but it might not actually be what's already there. So filmmaking in and of itself is a sort of cave, but they really, Proyas, which was his name because I looked it up, Alex Proyas, and I'm probably mispronouncing it, said that the allegory of the cave was a big influence on this for him. And as a queer person, I would argue, for me, whenever they do a movie like this, there's always an element of coming out and kind of seeing the world for what it actually is for you. And that, I think, I want to kind of reclaim that narrative a little bit, since people are constantly trying to say, oh, the Matrix is about freeing your mind for something else. And I'm like, no, it's a queer allegory. All of these things are queer allegories. You don't get them. We're taking them. These are ours. So that's kind of where I'm at with those. But yeah, that for me, from a historical perspective, from a technical perspective, and from a story perspective, less because of the elements of the story and more because of how it moves forward, that's why it was a 5 out of 5.
Okay, that's good. I agree with you on points of that. Waiya, what about your popcorn rating? What did you say? And what are your thoughts?
Oh, personally, it's an easy 5 out of 5 for me. Just one, it came to it. It was introduced in my life at a specific point where I was late teens. I was really angsty, and I was like, I wanted to hang out at Hot Topic all the time. So like the visual aesthetic was just exactly what I wanted. It had Richard O'Brien, which I'm a fan of a lot of his stuff it does, Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like, I started watching Crystal Maze. He was like, oh, he hosted this? A kid's show? Let's watch it. But just the pacing, the content, the aesthetic of it, easy 5 out of 5. And on top of that, while I started this out by saying it was a super dark sci-fi, it also mixes in some dark fantasy elements as well, because while the science is there, it's kind of hand wavy to the point it's almost magic and mystical happening, but it's very much explained, so it sits in the sci-fi. But it's just, it's one of those movies that came in my life at a specific time that I needed it to be in. And if I had seen it at any other point in my life, I probably wouldn't rate it so high.
Yeah, that makes sense. We're all a part of that like little bubble that initially saw this within like, give or take like 5 to 10 years. And I think nowadays generation is not going to understand it the way that we understand it.
Well, depending on where you go, if you grab some people at a Hot Topic, they probably kind of dig it. You're like, wait a second.
Maybe. Hot Topic has changed from our days.
That's true.
Yeah.
Fair. A lot less glitter belts.
Yes. Jennifer, what was your rating and why would you say it's rated at that?
So I gave it 4 popcorn buckets. And it's funny that you said Kiefer Sutherland, because while he was my main reason back then wanting to see the movie, he's the weakest link to me. And it is his pacing, but I feel like that's intentional because he's sort of this go-between between this world that's been curated and these creatures that can curate it. And I feel like he reminds me of Dr. Zola from the MCU a little bit in that he's expressing his, like, he wants these things to happen. He wants to have this like greatness that he'll never attain. Because he's being used. And I think for me, it was kind of such a plus the way they dress him and everything, he's completely out of the aesthetic. He's blondish hair, white cloak. I'm just like, you stick out. And so to me, that kind of was, it would jar me out of it every time. And like just a couple of the places where it could have moved a little quicker, but it's still, for me, 4 is pretty strong. So I do enjoy this movie still. Yeah,
I'm right there with you. And with his, like you said, he does stick out for me. I think that's a lot of what I was trying to say. Plus his speaking, when he's doing it, just like that broken, like he could have picked up the pace there a little bit more.
Yeah.
I get it. You were going for a character aesthetic, but move it along. Okay. So what I did want to, now that we're talking about it, I did want to talk about this cast because this cast, I have no complaints about this cast. I think it's phenomenal. We have Rufus Sewell as John Murdoch, William Hurt as Inspector Frank Bumstead, which I laugh every time they say his name. Kiefer Sutherland as Daniel Schreiber, Jennifer Connelly as Emma Murdoch, Richard O'Brien as the Hand, Ian Richardson as Mr. Book, Bruce Spence as Mr. Wall, and we have all the strangers and everything like that. What were your guys' thoughts on this cast? Do you think they played off of each other very well? Like me, where I said Kiefer was kind of at the bottom of everything and took it out for me. Did you have any complaints about them? Do you think they could have done any better? We'll start with you on this one, Waiya.
I love the cast, and I gotta detract from you. I gotta say I love Kiefer Sutherland and the choices they made with him for him to be set apart so much from the rest of the people, and because everybody else in Dark City is a part of the experiment. Whereas Kiefer Sutherland is set apart. He should be completely different. He doesn't wear black, he wears white because he's conducting the experiment. And I felt his speech patterns, especially looking back on it now, are more indicative of the torture he was constantly under. He was stressed and freaking out. He's experienced PTSD all the time because he knows what's going on. And he's trying to let people know without letting them know too quickly, because if they react poorly to it, all of his plans unravels immediately. So he's kind of talking in half riddles. He's like, hey, I need you to understand this, but I can't exactly tell you what it is because I'm being watched. And he has this manic, constantly stressed and tensed out feeling, even though you see he draws out his lines a lot and draws out the information that he gives. I see a guy that's incredibly paranoid and incredibly tortured in what he's doing because he hates that he's doing what he's doing, but he also sees it as a means to an end. And it's his way of surviving, you know?
Yeah, no, I actually didn't think about it that way. Like, I understood the different aspects of that, but never took it on his character, on things like that. So thank you for explaining that to me, because now I'm understanding it more, and I might actually raise my
that's why he hangs out in like the saunas, because he knows they are averse to water. That's the one thing he knows. It's the one place he feels somewhat safe. And when he's in the sauna area, his vocal like tics are very much subdued. And it isn't until he gets out of the water to go talk to the guy, and then all of a sudden his stutter comes back heavier. He becomes more agitated, and he's like, gets more freaked out just because he's leaving his safe space.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense to me now. Jennifer, what are your thoughts now hearing Waiya explain Kiefer Sutherland, but what are your thoughts on the cast and everybody else?
You actually bring up a lot of good points, Waiya, that I never really kind of put together. I think in my head, I was comparing him to his character in Flatliners, like back then, because that movie was my high school movie. Oh God, I'm old. But I think the whole cast was amazing. The moment I heard Richard O'Brien speak, I perked up. I'm like, wait, what? He's in this? Because I had forgotten. Jennifer Connelly, I'm sure she's a lovely person, and she can act, but she seems to act the same in every role. And I haven't seen all of her movies, but the few things I've seen, I'm just like, it's the same tone of voice, the same kind of look, like zoned out. And I get for Emma that worked because she was one of the people getting adjusted, and it just kind of, Rufus Sewell he's just such an amazing actor. And he really took this role. It kind of, in parts of it, reminded me of Memento as well, with the non-linear storytelling from the beginning and then going back to the beginning and telling it over. So, no, I thought it was a really strong cast. They played off each other very well. William Hurt, I mean, you can't say anything bad about him. He's amazing. And yeah, I enjoyed the casting. I think they all worked well together. The strangers creeped me out, especially the little kid one. I'm like, no, that's so weird. And but no, it was a well put together cast, and I think they played off each other really well.
Yeah, no, I'm there with you. Carolyn, what are your thoughts on this cast and everybody?
So I had to look up Rufus Sewell just now because he's one of those faces where it's like, you've seen him in a lot of things, but you don't know where, and he's just so good at what he does that he just slides into the background. And I looked up and I was like, wow, this is the same guy that was in A Knight's Tale. And I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, it was. And here he is playing. So I thought he was very versatile. I have no complaints about this cast, but I really like where Waiya was going with Kiefer Sutherland's performance, because now it makes you wonder if we're going by my allegory once again of film, or if we're going by like the whole idea of, curated memories and things like that. I want to propose a question for everyone, which is, they never specifically say like, because in the film they're like, everyone was abducted. They never say when people were abducted from. So it's like, you could really get the idea that perhaps Sutherland's character isn't just somebody who's completely out of touch with the city around him. He's also completely out of time. Like, he might be the only person, if they're from the 2030s or whatever, they're from like the 3000s or something, he might be the only person that has a real connection to what it means to be a human being, as far as everybody else, because everybody else is living in the 1940s. And then we're no spoilers or anything, but as things progress, you're like, well, when is anything happening? So he truly is an outsider, and then suddenly he has a secondary friend, a secondary person who understands him more in Murdoch. So I think that Murdoch, that made the relationship twice as interesting when I was thinking about what Waiya said, because I was just like, when did, we talk about like where, and it's like, when doesn't really matter, but at the same time, this guy truly is completely out of the realm of the rest of the human beings in this, and that's why he is the way that he is, because it was just like, damn.
Yeah, I totally agree. And on that time thing, you're totally right. And if you draw the parallel with the Matrix again, you really can't tell when, because the whole city is manufactured as a part of the experiment. Mm-hmm. The setting and everything is manufactured. So like, going along with, hey, we need to be able to sterilize our experiment, and so that no other outside influences except for the ones that we're putting in, so that we can have, empirical data. Mm-hmm. So that totally, they could have been taken from modern day and then just set in a 50s era, or they could have been taken from the 50s, and this is, generation 500 that's been going along with this experiment.
Yeah, yeah. So we do have a couple of things to the chats before we go on, but first, Carolyn, Cue Ball redeemed "You're So Punny," so you have to tell a punny joke.
Cue Ball redeemed "You're So Punny."
Mm-hmm.
So what you're telling me is that he wants me to get the ball rolling as far as puns go?
Sure.
Well, it looks like I might be on the wrong side of things. It looks like it might be Jen who has to give a pun.
Oh, sorry, Jen. It is you. Sorry, I apologize.
That's quite all right. I'm really grateful that I work with someone who tells us a punny dad joke every morning. And today's was, oh yeah, what did the fish say when it ran into the wall?
What?
Damn.
Oh, I got a good one. I'll give you one for free, Cue Ball. I'll give you one for free. You guys ready for this?
Maybe.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Daisy.
Daisy who?
They see me rolling.
Wow. Okay.
Nice.
Good job, everybody. Good job, Jen. Good job, Carolyn. But Cue Ball also does give his popcorn rating for this movie. He said this is a 5 out of 5 for him, and it's just one of those movies that it just fucking something in. I love the whole aesthetic, dark vibe of it. I know how the story kind of slows up and down throughout, and the music was so vibe. When I was just out of high school and I was in the dark gothic stuff, like in music and poetry, I felt like this movie had an Edgar Allan Poe vibe to it. So I do agree with that. Thank you, Q. I did want to talk about.
I was say Kiefer's character's middle name was Poe, so that makes sense.
Yeah. I did want to talk about a little bit of the cinematography and set design for this movie, because I think it is gorgeous, and the way that it was shot and the lighting and everything was just beautifully done. The way that they brought the buildings up and everything was just gorgeously done. I don't think they could have done any better with it. I want to get your guys' thoughts about this. We'll start with you on this one, Carolyn. You're shaking your head.
Everything about films like these has informed my personal aesthetic since I was tiny. I love being able to say that, because I love that German neo-surrealist, dark giant buildings and creepy gothic structures, and like the once again gonna sound pretentious, discourse and diatribes on capitalism that come with giant gothic buildings and the lack of individual identity that comes with them. But I love it 150%. The cinematographer, if he used the same cinematographer that he used on The Crow, and the same set designer, which it definitely has that same that at least similar visual look, it's its own, if an indie comic book, it's an indie comic book look. And it's like it's some Batman Year One. It's that same, and ever since I was a kid, I was 6 and I watched Batman Returns, and then this solidified it, and then The Matrix made it more real. And it's just, I love Alex Proya's whole aesthetic with these things. So I love it. 100%, 100 out of 10, no notes.
Okay. And what about you, Waiya? What do you think about the set design and the cinematography and everything?
Honestly, I was going to say something very similar to her. I love the cinematography and the set design. It very much feels like they said, hey, give me Tim Burton, but I want him super depressed because everything's black, which actually works really well with the CGI at the time, because most of the CGI, if you wanted it to be passable, it had to be very dark and very reflective, because they couldn't do non-reflective surfaces that well. So it always being raining and it always being dark tied everything together. So when you see the CG shots, they're pretty blended in, especially with a lot of your painted backgrounds, or CG painted backgrounds. You really don't notice that they're out of place at all. And honestly, for me, the only shots that even become questionable are once they actually have the sunrise, and I go, this looks so awkward now. It felt very much Truman Show at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I get you on that one. Jen, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, aside from the aliens injecting things into your head, I want to live there. Everything about it, the 40s noir kind of look, the clothes, the car, I mean, all of it. It was just amazing. And to what Waiya said, anytime they showed Shell Beach, even in the flashbacks, the colors were so saturated and so green screen looking that it was like, oh, this isn't, it almost made the other more attractive, even though you know what's going on there. Because it made the beach place with the sun feel scarier almost, because it was so kind of artificial feeling. And it's like this thing he's trying to attain, this memory he can never have because it's not even real. So yeah, I enjoyed, and when the buildings would transform, it kind of caught me off guard a couple times because it starts real subtle, and then I'm like, oh, that building just changed. And then they talk, of course they talk about what it is and what's happening, which is cool too. But no, my favorite scene is when he's treading water in the big pool. And it reminds me of the pool room of the Queen Mary. It's that very Art Deco, beautiful tile. I was like, oh, I want to go swimming there, but just not with the evil people. So yeah, I love everything. It's beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah, no, like I said, for all of this, I have no complaints. Now, thank you, Jen, for bringing this back, because I meant to talk about it a little while ago. Speaking of the evil people, the strangers in this movie, with this whole city being their experiment, because they want to find the soul. So they're going through the mind and they're changing people's identities to make them a newspaper salesman one day and then a millionaire the next day. And then John breaking this because he's learned their power. What did you think of them? Like, their power, do you think they should have been in it more? I know they freaked most of us out, especially that little kid. But what were your thoughts on the strangers? We'll start with you on this one, Wyatt.
Oh, well, I thought they were wonderfully done, because it was an introduction of an alien in a very much at least a practical way you would think aliens would do some kind of abduction or interactions with humans, that they'd completely camouflage themselves. So they're walking around in these meat suits, essentially, to do their business. Their technology is so far removed from ours that it seems like magic. That fits. And quite honestly, any time to see Richard O'Brien, it's like, yeah, rock on. One of the things I would say that really felt weird when I first remember watching it, it was that the people in the Dark City felt more alien to me than the aliens, the Mr. Book and Mr. Hand and whatnot, just because the aliens seemed to have more agency about, they knew where they were going, they knew what they were going to do, and they were just doing it as a matter of fact. Whereas the people, I guess it was a side effect of their brains always being wiped over. They just didn't seem like they were alive. They were just moving parts, cogs in a machine. And I think that kind of ties into how someone was talking about Jennifer Connelly's acting, where it was just very distant in that sense, and like didn't seem to have a personality. And I kind of made me think, it was like, you know what? Nobody really would have a personality. Whatever personality they were given it that personality that morning. So it would be foreign. It'd be like putting on someone else's pants or somebody else's underwear. It just feel icky all day, and you wouldn't know why. You go, oh, well, these aren't mine.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Although with them changing their minds, I would not mind going to sleep and waking up a millionaire. I'm just saying. Carolyn, what are your thoughts on the strangers?
I keep piggybacking off of stuff that Wyatt said, and I have to agree once again with the idea that, the people felt less real than the strangers themselves. You really did get the idea that they were an experiment. And you also got the idea that as far as their experiments go, whatever the aliens might have been attempting to do, or whatever they told Kiefer Sutherland that they were attempting to do, it was obviously having a very negative impact on the human beings, because the human beings were slowly being mutated into a hive mind, because that's basically what happens I would argue what would happen to any organism if you were confronted with consistent trauma on a regular basis is that you just start to think in terms of the group, which makes you wonder what created the strangers, because they are definitely operating, and what they're doing is reprehensible, and everything about them screams that way. I mean, from their chittering and everything else, but the fact that they put on the suits of the dead, and they make a big deal about that. They wear their they wear the flesh of the dead as we wear the flesh of your dead. Tells me that, they really have undergone some sort of strange traumatic event. And you're never know. You're never supposed to know, because it's supposed to be like, the antithesis of what human beings could be versus what. I could go on for hours, but the truth is, I think they were in the city for the perfect amount. While I found their civilization and their whole look haunting and frightening, it definitely leaned more towards frightening, because it reminded me of Dune, and I don't like Dune. I've never liked Dune. I don't like the scientific aesthetic of it. I don't like the story. Well, I don't like the story. I'm sorry, I don't. I don't like the scientific aesthetic and everything. So when you had, as the actors were the best part of it in them, but those suits and the way the city looked, I was just like, cool looking, but you guys are creepy. I don't like it.
Oh yeah. Jen, you were the first one to say that they're creepy. What are your thoughts?
They're still creepy, especially the kid. Kids are always, look, you take a kid, you put that like pale gray makeup on. So they were still grays, right? They're still gray aliens. They're just in meat suits.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gross. But they're very unsettling because of the floating. They're not trying to blend in. They're trying to be other and apart from this experiment that they have going. And there's a couple scenes towards the beginning when John is on like the subway, and he's the only one looking around. Everyone else is just like kind of, staring at their paper or asleep or whatever. And I think he notices that, and he's like, wait, what's going on here? And then he notices the guy at the desk, the hotel clerk, is now the newsstand guy. And he's like, what? So you can kind of see the pieces clicking in, and he's the only one, aside from the people, the strangers and Kiefer Sutherland, who has that awareness of what's going on. So seeing it, through his eyes, kind of helped me not be less afraid of them. But you could, my train of thought just derailed. Where was I going? Anyway, they're creepy and I don't like them. And I had a little dream about them last night after watching the movie. So hopefully I will not have that tonight, because I'm going to watch like Frozen or something to cleanse that out.
Let it go.
Yeah, exactly.
Let them go. Let them go.
But they fit the aesthetic perfectly.
Yes, no, I agree with that. Something that you said, Jen, was that like, especially when he's on the subway, when John's on the subway and everybody's just kind of focused into their own thing, and he's the only one looking around. I did want to touch base, because this movie was done in '98, before we really had computers like we're doing right now, cell phones that we're always constantly looking down. But now that we have transitioned into the age to where we get on a subway and nobody pays attention, what are your thoughts? Did you think that the movie plays parallel a little bit today? Not the darker themes and the strangers, but like that parallel, people not just paying attention. And what are your thoughts on that? We'll start with you on this one, Carolyn.
So I think you're right and you're wrong a little bit, because there's definitely a use lately of technology that like, if you do see something, you can use it in a positive way, which is a lot different than those movies where we were just seeing the bloom of technology. Because from 98 to about like, I think 2001, 2002, you had that idea a lot, because you were just coming into smartphones, you were just coming into technology, and people were naturally afraid of it. So you'd have like, laptops and things like that. You'd have phones and people would be looking at them, and people were worried that there was this whole world in phones. And in a way, movies like this one did us a service, because you had all these people and you had this ingrained thought that it's like, these people are sheep if they're constantly on their phones. It's like, yeah, we are. I'll choose to see it as a positive a little bit. However, that if there was a moment or something like people, the only time I'll see this as a positive, the only time I will see this as a positive is that people will make a funny TikTok, or they'll put it on their Instagram reel, or they'll do something like that. And it's like, yeah, you're still seeing it through the phone. But you're at least trying to interact with your environment. So I remember after the pandemic, because I remember after the pandemic at my job, and I remember I was outside because I work outside. I work at an entertainment center. I was outside and a duck walks out, and the duck just kind of waddled out, and the duck had no fear of human beings, no fear of human beings at all. So he's in the middle of the road, but suddenly there's all these people, and the duck's looking at the people, and he's walking, and then the humans, like one of them pulls out a phone and just starts filming the duck, and hand to God, all these people just keep filming this duck. So the duck's looking at them, and they're looking at the duck, and they're filming the duck. And it was like, it could have been worse. They could have been watching the duck on TV.
It's true. It's true. No, I completely agree with you. Jennifer, Waiya, do either of you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I grew up in pretty bad neighborhoods, like pretty rough neighborhoods in Southern California. And growing up, I learned the subtle art of minding my own business.
Mm-hmm.
So, the advent of smartphones is honestly just gives me something to do while doing that, because there was a lot of times when I was like 8, 9, you'd be walking down the street and you would see some crazy stuff in the alleyway that if you didn't want to get caught up in it, you had to mind your own business. You had to keep walking like you did not see that thing. Now, that thing may be something that's abhorrent, that may be something that, I should help, I should get involved. But a lot of the times, the best plan for your safety was to keep on strolling. And if you had a phone to be able to, I'm going to focus on this for at least the next 3 minutes so that I don't involve myself with this crazy person that's on the subway today that just happened to want to involve the closest 10 people in whatever they're doing. You know what? I'm going to be on my phone and they're going to ignore me. I don't see that happening. And nowadays, the phone is kind of the scapegoat for this, but in a lot of realities, for a lot of people, minding your business and not getting involved in the everyday thing that you see going on keeps you safe. So the fact that the people within Dark City just kind of mind their own for the most part, considering the way the city is set up as this like just dour place to be. There's never any sunshine. It's always raining. You don't ever remember the last time you went and did something fun. It was just going from A to B and then you get reset. A to B, get reset. Because sometimes in a situation, especially like in this case, a prison, it's best to keep your head down. Do your time. Don't question it
like that. Yeah, no, you're right.
It's a survival tactic.
You're right.
Yeah, I definitely didn't think about it like that. Jen, do you have anything else to add?
I was thinking about it actually. So they're having their brains scrambled every night or however often it happens. They may not have the capacity to look around and they're just like adjusting to whatever's just happened in their brain. But I would be interested if this movie had been made post 9/11. Would there be a difference in the way the crowds were acting? Would they be acting more paranoid of each other instead of focused on just what's in front of them? If that whole see something, say something thing came in, would that have been something that had played into it? Because I could see it either way. Just because I was old when that happened, so I remember how people changed. And back then, you had like a Nokia you could play Snake on, so you couldn't really, it wasn't like today where you could be like, oh, it was more like, I'm just gonna catch this snake here. So it would be interesting to see this movie made in a different time with a different level of technology. And let's face it, we interact socially very differently than we did in 1998. Like you said, there's TikTok, there's YouTube, there's all these different things. Everything's at our fingertips. We didn't have to wait for anything. So I wonder if that would have a change in it. But no, you have a very good point with that. And I think part of it plays into their brains getting a little played with every night. They're just like, okay, reset. So
how do I get through today?
Yeah. Who am I?
I am going to say Q did redeem hydrate. So everybody, cheers.
I'm getting quite hydrated.
See, those are really good. I like those. But Q also did have a little bit to add for when we were talking about scenery and everything. Q says the scenery in this movie is so beautifully done in a dark comic book setting and gives the characteristics of the characters and background that Tim Burton meets Edgar Allan Poe. The actors are amazing, but the film gives us a journey of the main character's mental state and how he feels and sees things happening to him. The sci-fi part of the film gave it a extra layer of story. It does make you think and wonder what's going to happen next. And the Nom Talk Network says, I think they even said it. The film intentionally made sure it wasn't going to tell you what's going on, which is great, which we talked about a little bit earlier.
I would like to tack on something to what he just said about the scenery and setting, because one of the key things that doesn't get really a spotlight on it is that the shape of the city is a big round circle, right? You have the people on top, and then underneath you have the others, the strangers. It's almost a physical representation of the metaphor, two sides of the same coin. And so you got these two societies that are living with each other without knowing that they're just on the other side of the coin in this sense. And during this process, they're always trying to deconstruct the other side, and really they're fairly similar, because you have these strangers that are in a prison sentence of they're going to die because they can't reproduce, and they don't know how they're going to solve this problem. Meanwhile, we have all these people that are in this dark city. They're going to die because they can't leave, and they don't know what they're going to do to get out of this situation. And so you really do got two sides of the same coin kind of situation going on that's represented in the set design there.
Oh, yeah, I like it. I didn't think about it that way either. You're bringing out some very good points tonight, Waiya. Thank you.
Love that movie.
Well, I will say that we are coming towards an end, so I do want to get your guys' final thoughts about this movie. Would you recommend this movie to anybody? Like, just your encapsulation of the overall film. We'll start with you on this one, Waiya.
Yeah, absolutely. I would totally recommend this. Excuse me. I would totally recommend this to other people. If you're a fan of dark sci-fi, if you're a fan of dark fantasy, where humans are on the bottom of the totem pole and you're just figuring out how to make things work, this is a great movie. I would also probably say you probably need to watch a couple movies to ease yourself into it, because it's one of those movies that if you're not prepared for, you will be lost. And, you know, a lot of people that get lost get it disinterest.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you had some primer movies leading up to it, like, hey, if you had a friend that enjoyed Equilibrium and you're like, you know what, we could watch something that'll blow your mind on top of this. Yeah, bring them right into Dark City.
Nice. Yes, I like the parallel there. Yeah. Jen, what are your final thoughts, and would you recommend this movie?
Oh, I would definitely recommend this movie. I'm actually going to watch it again after this, but I'm going to pay attention to the scribbles the detective's making on the walls, because I was trying to look at that, but I'm like, no, don't focus on that. Watch the movie. And the newspaper headlines, because I felt a couple times when I caught them, I was like, so now I have to go back in my X-Files frame of mind and look for the context clues and things. So I know, I'm like, oh, I rented it on Amazon, so I only have it for another day and a half. So I got to watch it while I can. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And, you know, people still love this movie, because I talked to a couple of people just in the last couple of days. I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this episode of this podcast. We're going to talk about Dark City. And I would get in all caps, oh my God, I love that movie. So, you know, it definitely has stood the test of time. And I'm really glad I watched it again and that I participated in this. I have a whole new appreciation for it.
Mm-hmm. Agreed with you. Definitely has been a long time since I watched it, but I had that same reaction when I was just like, oh, I love Dark City. Carolyn, what are your final thoughts, and would you recommend?
Well, first of all, Wyatt, you said Equilibrium, and I love you for that. Just because, yeah. That whole genre, I actually have an Equilibrium tattoo. So that's how much I love that whole genre of films.
Gotta love the good kata.
Yes. Before there was The Matrix, there was Equilibrium at Dark City. I would recommend this film mostly because I want Gen Z to tell me what they think. I want Gen Z. I want people in their early 20s. I want the people who are on TikTok, because I spend way too much damn time on TikTok, I want the people who are in there to watch that movie and tell me what they think of it, because I think it would give a whole new perspective, and either people would hate it or love it, but I want to recommend it so that I can see what other people from, like Jen said, what other people from different time periods or different places, because I didn't even think when you said when you were talking about, like, you know, different locations and different places where you didn't want to get involved, you're absolutely correct. And when you're speaking from a place of privilege where you're like, you don't really deal with that every day, like, see, that's the perspective I want. I want more people to watch it so that I can internalize more and see more. So yes, I would wholeheartedly recommend it. And I really want people younger than me to watch it, because I'm just like, I want to see what you think, and then have them watch Equilibrium. And then
tell my kids. I make my kids watch it.
Yes.
Oh yeah, no, I would definitely recommend this movie as well. Like, my entire household, they'd never seen it, and I made them watch it last night, and they loved it. So I'm doing a little bit of that. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Carolyn. I want the younger generation to watch this and see what their thoughts of it are. Jennifer, you said seeing it at a different time. I could not imagine it being done now, because you'd have like Chris Pine being like the detective and stuff like that, and it would be like directed by like James Gunn or something like that. It would be a completely different movie. I feel like it was made at the perfect time for what it is, and it will stand the test of time. But now, having said that, I completely enjoyed having this conversation with you guys tonight, but we are out of time. That's all we have for today. I do want to give you guys a shout out for being here. Please be sure to join our Discord to keep this conversation going, as well as subscribing to all of our other platforms at Nom Talk Network. Tune into our next show, which will be Junji. But everybody out there, Carolyn, go ahead and tell everybody out there where they can find you on social media and in life, I guess.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Carolyn's Geek Out, and that's CarolynLyns Geek Out on Instagram. I am on Twitter for now at Carolyn in Fandom, LYN, and then Fandom capitalized. And I mostly just post pop culture thoughts, and I'm getting back into blogging and writing. And one day maybe I'll be brave enough to post my TikTok, but that day is not yet come.
Nice. And Jen, where can people out there find you?
You can find me on Instagram at do_as_Peggy Says, PEGGYSAYS, all one word. Also, you can follow the adventures of my cosplay service group, the Avengers Initiative, and they are on Instagram at Avengers Cosplay.
Nice. And Waiya, where can everybody find you out there?
Well, you can find me here on Twitch at Waiya Paints, video games or painting. And you can also check out my new YouTube channel where I'm putting up painting tutorials for Waiya Paints as well. So
nice.
Very nice. And again, my name's Erric Ramirez. You can find me at Heartless7. That's HARTL3SS7 on all platforms except for Twitter, because I just kind of got out of that with all the things that happened. But thank you guys for joining us. Please join us on Friday, and until then, have a nomorific day.